cartoon volume, which has inaugurated a new and menacing era in the history of man. Monsters.
Godzilla is a monster that needs no introduction. It's one of the most iconic characters, let alone monsters, in media history, and just as importantly, a symbol of nuclear devastation, war, and natural disaster. Though with most Godzilla films from Showa to Godzilla x Kong being more action-based, it's easy to forget Godzilla's origins and was straight up horror. From the very first film, Gojira, to Godzilla v Hedorah, to GMK, to My Beloved Shin, and even to -1. Godzilla is still good when it's not horror, but I believe Godzilla shines brightest when it is. Regardless, it's undeniable that Godzilla in horror works. But how far does it stretch? People on the internet have attempted to adapt Godzilla to modern forms of horror, such as creepypasta, and more relevant to this video, analog horror. But does it work? The Man in the Suit is a series of videos centered around a mysterious worker who played Godzilla in the very first movie, Gojira. This worker, who would be dubbed Goji, a name which he insisted on being called, never took off the suit once he put it on, even during his lunch break. This was incredibly strange, and it got even weirder, where during filming, Goji would just stop, the only sign of living from him being his odd breathing. People on set would try to take the suit off, but they couldn't. Goji had become the suit. What's interesting about this is it's loosely based on what actually happened during the filming of Gojira in 1954. The actual real-life actor, Haruo Nakajima, by the way, the suit actor in the series is very clearly not meant to be Haruo. Take that information as you will, spoke in an interview on the conditions of the suit. It weighed upwards of 100 kilos or about 220 pounds. The suit would get up to a claimed 60 degrees Celsius or about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And on top of that, numerous incidents would occur during filming, including the actor almost drowning, getting set on fire, and notably, getting electrocuted during a scene gone wrong. Fortunately, he was completely fine after all of this. Skin fusing to objects is a thing that can actually happen, though not to this extent, but it does add a sense of logic to the story. Throughout the rest of the series, Goji seems to become more animalistic in its nature, yet still retains some level of humanity. The directors noted Goji was very cooperative during filming of Godzilla Raids Again, until the final scene, where Goji would chomp on the Anguirus actor's head, making him bleed profusely. Goji would protect his unconscious body like an animal with its young, and the same thing that happened to Goji happened to him. In later entries, the same thing would happen to a Mothra and a King Ghidorah actor. Not to the King Kong actor though, he just straight up killed him. In the final entry, Goji chased the cameraman on set with the sole intention of killing him, but the cameraman had an ace up his sleeve. A shotgun. Goji was completely decapitated, but to his absolute horror, he began rapidly regenerating. Goji had fully become a monster. The Man in the Suit is an interesting concept, and decent in execution, with the series only improving as it went on, though there are a few drawbacks and complaints, both controllable and uncontrollable, that hold the series back. By the way, this is not a signal to spew hatred towards the series, and especially not the creator. This is nothing more than criticism and sharing my opinion. The same applies to the rest of the entries. This series was cancelled a while ago because of this very reason. The most notable drawback relates to the very genre it's in, analog horror, which in itself will draw hate no matter how good it is. The series draws a lot from the Mandela catalog and analog horror tropes in general. Whether good, bad, or overdone, they rarely benefit the story, and most often take away from it. A good example that demonstrates this issue is the use of glitched audio at the end of the first episode. The visual is actually pretty disturbing. A man quite literally exploding into a suit is unsettling regardless, but the glitched audio is more silly and obnoxious than scary. The Anguirus episode actually fixes this issue. It lets the visual breathe on its own, though this leads me into another issue with the series, which is the pacing. Don't get me wrong, it's good to let things sit to build tension, but it can often get excessive. As an example, the what they expected versus what they found ending. Specifically, the only text parts overstayed their welcome with the Anguirus entry, especially considering by this point in the series, every viewer expected what was to come. With this, a lot of the series boils down to text in a VHS background, kinda like my videos. Though to be fair, it was created by just one guy, and a kid at that, so it's 100% understandable that the quality isn't on the later entries level. Though honestly, I think it boils down to whether you find the visuals disturbing or not. If you do, then the text exposition leading up to it is worth it, at least somewhat. But if you don't, then the series won't captivate you. It's just not your thing. Like, I personally find the visuals in Ghidorah's suit incident disturbing, but then I just can't take the visuals from rare newspapers seriously. Not because it's bad, but because I find the concept of Godzilla randomly showing up in someone's front yard in the middle of the night more absurd than unnerving. Whether Godzilla works or not in the Man in the Suit is debatable. I think it's an enjoyable series, but it's not solid proof of this, but is. The Suitmation Trials is one of the first notable attempts at putting Godzilla in analog horror, spanning from early 2022 to late 2024. It's a series of 9 videos all based around Godzilla, or what appears to be Godzilla. It all starts with an unknown person who wants to get back into watching Godzilla, as they have fond memories from their childhood of watching it. So they start with Godzilla 1954, which was completely normal, but when they move on to the second film, Godzilla raids again. Something weird happens when Godzilla and Anguirus interact for a second time. Then it cuts to this, which I will let play out. In the next instance, the person pops back in the same tape again, and the same thing happens, except different and later than normal. It appears Godzilla killed somebody in what seems to be the real world. He appears to be gaining a foothold on reality, in a similar way to Dr. Nowhere's Locust, or at least this message suggests it. The third instance is much the same, though now appears Godzilla has broken free and killed more people, most likely people trying to contain him. The next few episodes are centered around the final message in the third instance. You're still in the woods, do not forget that. Though they create more questions than answers. It's clear that Godzilla in some form is actually in this reality. You can see the light created by his atomic breath in the background. But then who is this man with the lower half of Godzilla in human hands? The wiki doesn't even identify this person as Godzilla. But why would they have the legs of Godzilla? The final 4 entries seem to clear Godzilla's identity up a little bit though. In Late Night with, a person is being interviewed, who is supposed to be the creator of the original Godzilla, Ishiro Honda, as he reveals in the end.
You've seen that movie, right?
The kid.
Huh?
That was him. He made it.
Honda?
Ishiro claims to have seen a monster during the war in 1937, who description-wise, appears to be the real-life Godzilla, which when matched with what happened in the previous entries, draws Godzilla out to be a demonic, supernatural type entity, with the power of shape-shifting and possessing things, including suits and people, which is what likely happened in the past entries. The final few entries only confirm this, with Godzilla possessing a woman to further his reach, though this still leaves questions about former entries. It's clear the Godzilla entity was the one that killed Anguirus and all those people, but did he possess the suit to do this during filming, or is he an actual physical being doing all of this? The final entry, Roy G. Biv, does not clear any of this up, and as of this date serves as a final cryptic video in this series. The Suitmation Trials has interesting parts to it, and in my opinion a mildly interesting story, even if it is convoluted. It's reminiscent of old arcs and classic creepypastas like Been Drowned, with the dialogue and haunted tapes / cartridges, which while certainly not original, is enjoyable to a degree. The series suffers from similar issues as The Man in the Suit, except arguably worse, that being its use of analog horror tropes and its use of text. And while it only occurs in the first 3 entries of the Suitmation Trials, it is white text on a black screen. The visuals can actually be creepy at times, especially in instance 2 in my opinion, though it's subjective, which can be an issue as multiple entries heavily rely on visuals, while the rest of the tapes kind of act as a cryptic plot unless as, well, actual analog horror videos. I don't mean to hate on it, I personally actually enjoyed it, and the second entry actually creeped me out, a bit, but it lacks in many areas, which holds me back from giving it any high praise. Overall, the series falls short of Man in the Suit, so it's certainly not the best case of Godzilla working in analog horror, which is expected as it's one of the first attempts at it. Project Monster is a group of 3, technically 7, found footage videos created by Lost Utopia Films. I say technically 7 because there's an extra 4 sub-minute long videos that seem to be there just for the plot, but we'll focus on the big 3, starting with the first episode, The Griffin. In November of 1994, a meteor crashed in Utah, releasing a swarm of bat-like alien creatures into the US. Despite the meteor being contained, these entities went undiscovered for 3 days, devouring animals and heading towards the east coast of the United States. Eventually, in a forest in Kentucky, they fused into a single being, the Griffin. After fully forming, the Griffin flew to New York and launched a surprise attack on Zilla Jr., or in this universe, Subject 16. The Griffin appeared to beat Zilla with relative ease, but not long after he was struck down with a beam, which had came from Godzilla. The legendary pictures Godzilla is the main Godzilla used in this series, just for your information, though as you will see later, most of them are involved one way or another. Godzilla and the Griffin battle for a while, exchanging blows with neither one of them really having the upper hand, until Zilla rejoins the fight and tackles Griffin, where the fight would shortly close with a beam battle, which would leave Godzilla reigning supreme, and a bloody mess. The next entry serves as world building for the horrible world these people live in. It is entitled Living with Monsters.
This is the blast of the hydrogen bomb, which has inaugurated a new and menacing era in the history of man. Monsters.
The video functions as a documentary and takes place in what is most likely the 1950s or 1960s, sometime after Godzilla would have first arrived in 1954. The narrator, whose name is Gene Maldonado, informs the watcher of the many events going on in this world. Kaiju, or superfauna, have become a common part of life in the past 7 years, with 17 deadly attacks on man occurring in that time. Monsters had existed for countless years up to this time, dating back to prehistoric man and before, so why are they resurfacing all of a sudden? The same reason in 1954 Godzilla resurfaced, the hydrogen bomb. And, what do you know? What appears to be the 1954 Godzilla, or at least Showa Godzilla based on size, washed ashore. This occurrence and multiple attacks on Japanese ships not much later made Tokyo City brace for the attack of Godzilla, but unfortunately, in their attack plane they seriously miscalculated Godzilla's size. This is a really interesting way of tying all the different versions of Godzilla together in one single universe, making them members of the same species but in different stages of life, or just a lab experiment gone wrong, as you will see later. Godzilla's attacks caused absolute devastation to Tokyo, which includes its people, which is where the epitome of what makes Godzilla scary lies, him being a walking nuclear bomb, or the embodiment of a natural disaster, a nigh unstoppable force that destroys everything in its path. And that's what Godzilla is in this specific instance here, which is especially emphasized with the showing of the aftermath.
No conventional weaponry could stop the monster.
Continuing with the video, the military make an attempt to kill Godzilla. They lure Godzilla to a specific area through ships, where they detonate a hydrogen bomb right in his face.
2, 1.
This only serves as a temporary fix, however, when a new kaiju shows up in Japan, Anguirus, and the very much still alive Godzilla makes a return to fight him. What's interesting is this was actually a fight for territory. As a matter of fact, almost every fight between kaijus in this universe is a fight for territory, as can be seen towards the end of the video with Godzilla and kaiju called Canara being rivals because Canara's home, Hawaii, is in Godzilla's territory. While this does stray away from Godzilla's nuclear roots, it does make Godzilla and the rest of the kaiju seem more animalistic. They are, just like lions have their own territories, so do kaijus, just on a much larger scale. The video concludes from there, but there's one detail towards the end that I find really compelling towards the story, which is the fact that it actually ends on a positive note. Countries unite, researchers unite to solve problems, radiation-related discoveries are found and used, and more. While obviously this isn't meant to be scary, it grounds the story in a sense of realism, which, not to bash on any other analog horror, is often either not done well or not done at all. Despite living with monsters not being too scary, the grounding in reality done in this makes the next and currently final entry in the series by far the scariest entry yet, Shelter 54. The incident started when a genetics company, Biomajor, had a leak when one of their pipes broke, leaking radioactive materials into the water, which some mosquitoes drank, and became these horrific things, dubbed Skeetera. The Skeeter would hunt superfauna or kaijus in order to feed off their blood, till one day when a fight took place between them and Zilla, where Zilla would win, but upon smashing the last Skeetera, its blood and guts would spill into a shelter dubbed Shelter 54, killing everyone inside. Except it didn't kill anyone. It created something. Graphic warning going into this next part.
The organism, but we're a part of it, as were the plants from hydroponic storage. Fully merged.
The victims of Shelter 54 had become a superfauna hive mind of sorts, along with plants that were stored with them. At the time, this thing was referred to as Subject 19, but this horrible conglomeration of ever-suffering people evolved into something with a much more familiar name, Biolante.
Site of Subject 19's new form.
The military would promptly attack Biolante by bombing its eye of Erica. Which proved somewhat effective, but horrific. Biolante would not die, but in fact rapidly evolve into a completely different form, one you will likely recognize, Shin Godzilla. The military would attack it to not much avail, but then the very thing it replicated shows up. Godzilla is actually curious at first, which makes sense as Biolante is composed of G cells, making it a relative of sorts to Godzilla. Though, this very quickly results in a battle. Which the real Godzilla will come out on top of in the end, blasting Biolante into bits. At least Godzilla probably thought it did. The government lured Godzilla out back to the ocean, but before it could even get close, Biolante came into its final form. And actually almost defeats Godzilla. Until it unlocks thermonuclear, the battle would end as a stalemate, as Godzilla was left paralyzed yet ultimately fine, and Biolante recovered from the blast, both of them becoming peaceful. Godzilla though in more of a temporary way. And the video pretty much concludes there, ending with a PSA of sorts, but also ending in a dark way. Biolante still being alive was the worst outcome of that battle. The victims of Shelter 54 are still alive in there, suffering, unable to and only able to yearn for death. By the way, as can be seen in an earlier call between a victim and a caller, there were straight up children in that shelter. This comment sums it up perfectly. Biolante does not scream in triumph, but in pain. Pain that will last eons. Project Monster is easily the best Godzilla analog horror ever made, and 100% deserves the title. Its quality and production value are really high, especially for a YouTube project. The story and universe are fascinating and in itself terrifying, and and Shelter 54 serves as a final terrifying entry to the story. With its visuals that are reminiscent of Greylock in the best way possible, the series grounds itself in reality despite being completely fictional really well, making it easier to immerse yourself in the universe. Though even Project Monster is not without its drawbacks, though most of them are honestly debatable. The most prominent drawback in my opinion is the fact that it doesn't really lean into the horror aspect that hard in the first 2 episodes, which is great as a Godzilla fan series, but questionable as a Godzilla found footage series. Some of the animation can be a little strange at times, though this is practically reaching. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. Project Monster is undeniably a solid analog horror, and I think it proves that even if it may be difficult to do, Godzilla can work in analog horror. Though, there are 2 other small projects I think are worth noting quickly. Godzilla Bloodbath honestly isn't even really an analog horror. It's more of a modern creepypasta. But honestly, I think for what it is, it does a good job in being just plain disturbing. Also, it's in the thumbnail, so I had to bring it up. Despite this being just one 2-minute video, it's on the same level with Project Monster. It shows the perspective of what a person in real life would see upon Godzilla approaching them. Just a massive black mass of terror slowly approaching you. And the effect of the radiation emitted from Godzilla on the camera is perfectly eerie. I recommend you go watch it. In fact, I recommend you go watch every series contained in this video. See if you like it, because Godzilla can 100% work in analog horror.